Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over an upcoming warm blast of air into the eastern two-thirds of the United States, and we're actually going to be dealing with some rather cool temperatures right behind this big area of warmer temperatures. So we're going to be going over how warm your temperatures will be. We're going to be seeing widespread 70s and even 80s and 90s to areas further to the south. Areas further north might get into the 60s or 50s, so definitely some very, very warm temperatures. And then again, behind those warm temperatures will be dealing with some chillier air potentially, and we're going to be covering all of that and more in today's video. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. Quite quiet for much of the United States. Really the only action is out west, where we actually have some winter weather advisories in effect for Northern California in the higher elevations. We have high wind warnings in kind of that golden color for parts of Oregon and California, as well as a stripe of some wind advisories back from Utah to California and Oregon, as well as another area for parts of New Mexico and Texas. And then other than that, there really aren't a lot of other things going on. I believe there are a couple of fire weather watches scattered throughout parts of the Central Plains and a few special weather statements. But again, other than that, there really isn't a lot going on. We still have some of those flood warnings up along the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, and those areas still are dealing with some flooding issues, unfortunately. So hopefully that flooding does wane out, and we start to kind of get out of that flooding stage and start to go back to a bit of a more lower water levels, and we start to go back to normal over those areas. And your high temperature for the entire continental United States yesterday was in Rio Grande Village in Texas. They got to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, and the low temperature was tied between two areas. Afton, Wyoming, they got to -8 degrees Fahrenheit, and Stanley, Idaho, they got to -8 degrees Fahrenheit as well. Harrison Park, California, in Southern California, got 1.61 inches of rainfall yesterday, and the highest snowfall report was in Divide, Colorado, which is just west and actually south of the Denver metro area. They got 8 inches of snowfall, and that area is within a highly elevated part of Colorado. So here's what the high temperatures look like, because we're going to be playing this through. We are going to be seeing these very warm temperatures continue to spread from the Central Plains eastward into parts of the eastern United States as well. You can see all that cold air back through the western part of the country. We have a big ridge up into the central part, and then it goes back down into the eastern part of the country. So we have a ridge back through here. We have a trough back through the western United States, and a trough again through the eastern United States. And all of this is going to be heading eastward. So the warm air is going to move eastward. The cold air is also going to move eastward. So you can see the warm air starts to spread out a little bit more as we get through Sunday. So you can see a lot of 60s in the yellow, even into the darker shades of yellow. That's where you're dealing with mid 60s, even into the low 70s in a lot of areas. So very comfortable and warm temperatures for this time of year in a lot of those areas. Here's by Monday. Not a lot changes, except that it does move a little bit further to the east, and we're dealing with some 70s even popping up as far north as South Dakota there. So very, very warm. We have that warm air pushing straight up from the Gulf of Mexico, but we do have somewhat of a lingering trough back through the eastern United States. So still a bit of cold air right along the east coast and some of the states bordering the Atlantic Ocean. Other than that, the rest of the eastern two-thirds of the country are under some quite warm conditions. Anywhere pretty much east of the Rockies are basically above 50 degrees for most of those areas, except for in the northeast. And then even the northeast warms up by Tuesday, the 9th of March. We're dealing with mid-70s, even all the way up to parts of Nebraska and Kansas. We even see a couple 80s popping up for parts of Texas there. We have 60s pushing all the way up to New England, back through into Michigan, Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, even getting up into the upper 50s, low 60s. So very, very warm conditions, well above normal temperatures for these regions. And then by Wednesday, the 10th of March, we're dealing with mid-60s back through the entire East Coast, even some upper 60s as you get further to the south. We have some 70s and mid-70s even back through parts of the southern and central plains, and even into parts of the southeast as well, and even some 80s covering a good chunk of Texas there as well. We don't see too much change on Thursday. The 11th of March still looks nice and warm for much of the country. We're dealing with 60s, 70s for a lot of these areas. This is by Thursday. Again, March 11th. Here's by March 12th, which is Friday. It looks like the East Coast is really going to warm up here all the way up until about New Jersey. And then it looks like we will have some sort of cold front right around here, or a warm front right around here. So to the north of there, you're going to stay rather chilly. It's still a bit above average, actually. And that's ahead of a storm system that's going to be moving through right about here. So we are dealing with warm temperatures right ahead of that system, depending on where that tracks. Of course, that's going to depend on how far north those temperatures are, but if you are south of that warm front and south of where that storm is going to track, then it looks like you could get into the mid 70s, even a few low 80s, all the way as far north as parts of the mid-Atlantic and the southeast. So definitely prepare for a warmer stretch of weather, but we want to watch what's right behind this storm system and this kind of surge of warm air right here. So we have very cold temperatures, or seasonably cold temperatures, back through parts of the northern Rockies, northern plains, and into parts of western Canada. That's going to be dipping further to the south, right behind the system. So we might get into a couple days after this warm event, and we might go back into a bit of a chillier pattern, although either way, I don't think it's going to be too overly cold for most areas, and it definitely doesn't look like we're dealing with any sort of significant cold that would be maybe 20, 30, 40 degrees below normal. It looks like we should be fairly close to the normal either way, and then this would be by Saturday, the 13th of March. Still cold, still warm for much of the East Coast, again, all the way up to about New York City and New Jersey area, and then south of there is where you're dealing with the warm temperatures for the southeast, the south central areas of the country, and you're even looking at a few mid 70s, even 80s into southern Florida there. So definitely very, very nice weather for this Saturday, the 13th of March. Again, this could change. This is all going to be dependent on how these storms interact, although it does look like probably getting into next week, we might go into a bit more of an active pattern with a few more storm systems. Right now we're in a very dry pattern. We really don't have a lot going on except for this warm event followed by this colder air. Here's your temperature anomalies, and to kind of explain how this works, it's taking your average for each individual day. So for example, let's just say that whatever city you want to choose has an average high temperature of 70 degrees. If you have -5 printed on your screen right here, that means that the temperature that day was 5 degrees below normal and would be 65 degrees, given our example. If you were, let's say, 20 degrees above normal and your average high temperature is 70 degrees, let's say, then you would have a high temperature of about 90 degrees. So it's just showing you how far above normal you are, and it's a good way to contextualize where the actual warm air is, because you can see that on the screen that we were just looking at, on the frames that we were just looking at with the high temperatures, you were looking at 70s, 60s, but we really don't know if that's above or below normal just by looking at that map. And that's really what this graphic is good at. It's really good at showing you where is actually seeing those warmer temperatures compared to normal. So you can see that the real surge of warm air is actually back through the northern plains. It's actually a bit cooler as you get back through the East Coast and the southeast by this point. This is by tomorrow into Sunday. Still cooler for the eastern third of the country, but you get into that central column of the United States. That's where you're closer to 20 or 30 degrees above normal, and then this is when the warm air starts to really overtake the cold air, is receding by this point. We still have somewhat of a trough right along the immediate East Coast as we get through Monday, so we still have somewhat of a dip in the jet stream right around here, but that's leading to a big rise in the jet stream right around here. So that's leading to very, very warm temperatures, and we're definitely going to start to feel like maybe even late April in some of these areas, depending on exactly where you are. You're close to 30 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. So you will definitely start to feel like you're maybe a couple of months ahead of time here. And then, of course, we're going to deal with some colder temperatures behind that. So we do have to prepare for potentially a little bit of a cool down right after this really warm blast of air. Here to be by Tuesday and into Wednesday of next week, we're dealing with very warm conditions back through much of the areas east of the Rockies. You can see 15 or more degrees above average in most of those areas. And that's just going to kind of sit over there. Then right around Friday is when it starts to really kind of get suppressed a little bit further to the south. Here to be by Saturday, and we're dealing with Saturday, March 13th. We're dealing with cold temperatures back through the central part of the country. On either side of the United States, we have warmer temperatures, and this is when we start to go into a bit of a cooler pattern. And after that, that's when you might start to get into a bit of a chillier air mass. Although we will be tracking that if that does actually end up occurring. Let's start looking at your upper air maps, which is going to show you where the high pressure and the low pressure is. The high pressure would be indicated by these colors, the yellow, the orange, the red, even into some of the browns there. And then your low pressure, which usually indicates colder temperatures, is in the blue. So you can see that in the blue, the green, the purple. That's where you're dealing with low pressure, or typically cooler than normal temperature. So you can see that to start this off by tomorrow, we have a big ridge into the central part of the country, a big trough on the eastern side of the country, and we have this low pressure which is going to slam into the western part of the country. So we have a very dynamic and amplified looking storm pattern. By this point, we see that trough dip further south into the United States. So here's your low pressure. By this point, we have another one back through here, and we have a high pressure which is dominating the central part of the country. So if we play this forward a little bit more, this would be by Sunday, and into Monday and Tuesday is when that trough moves completely out of the eastern United States, and now we're overtaken by all of this warm air. We have a big high pressure sitting over much of the eastern part of the country. We actually have a low pressure and a trough sitting over the western part of the country, somewhat like this. So that's bringing in some cooler temperatures out of Canada, and that's dipping that further south into the western United States. But over much of the eastern United States, again, we're dealing with warmer temperatures here to be by Wednesday and Thursday, and you can see that pattern really doesn't move around too much. It's again by next weekend when we start to see a little bit of a shift in the pattern, and you can see that by Saturday and Sunday we go into much of a cooler pattern or looking pattern. We have a big ridge into Alaska, and that means that you're going to have a big trough into the eastern and central part of the country. We're going to really have to see how that plays out. Looks like we could be dealing with something interesting around the end of next week, although, again, we're still so far out from that a lot could still change. Here's your 6 to 10 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. So this would be from the 10th of March, Wednesday the 10th, all the way until Sunday the 14th, and this is what the Climate Prediction Center is looking at. This is your chances of being above or below normal. They have a 60% plus area of 60% chance of or more of seeing above normal conditions for much of the eastern United States. Within this area that I highlighted right here is where they have a 60 to about an 80% chance of being above normal, and you can see that bigger area, or actually that smaller area of below normal temperatures back through the western United States, a very good probability that they will see below normal temperatures. And then here's your 8 to 14 day outlook, and this goes from Friday the 12th all the way until Thursday the 18th of the following week, and we have a little bit of warm air still lingering on through the east coast, but really you're dealing with more average or maybe even a little bit below normal temperatures as you get back through the Rockies, the western United States, even into some parts of the Great Plains. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this. It looks like the middle and later part of March is a little bit more dicey, where instead of being in one set pattern, we're going to kind of bounce around between warm and cold. And then if we look at your 3 to 4 week outlook, which goes from March 13th through the 26th, you can see that we have 70% chance of above normal conditions all through this area that I'm highlighting right here in the black, and I'll highlight the area that has a 60% chance or more of being above normal in that blue. So anywhere east of this blue line has a 60% chance or greater of being above normal, according to the Climate Prediction Center, from March 13th through the 26th. And anywhere within those two black lines is where you have at least a 70% chance of being above normal within that time period. So either way, it looks like we're dealing with warm temperatures of maybe some 60s, 70s, and 80s, depending on exactly where you live. Definitely enjoy the warm temperatures. Get out there and go enjoy the nice spring weather. It's going to start to feel like summer soon as we get into April and May if this pattern really continues. And then soon enough we'll be already in hurricane season. So I have my hurricane graphics that I'm working on currently to try and get them up to date and try to improve them. So I'll have some updated and new hurricane graphics for this hurricane season, and that's definitely going to be very, very exciting. Can't wait to show those with you. And then also we'll be continuing to cover all the severe weather that's going to be going on this spring season. It looks like you'll at least have an average or maybe even a bit above average severe weather season, and we'll be here to cover it for you. So that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.